Legal luminaries, lawmakers challenge constitutionality of Anti-Terrorism Act before Supreme Court. Four groups of lawyers and opposition lawmakers trooped to the Supreme Court on Monday to challenge the legality of the recently signed anti-terrorism law. Far Eastern University Institute of Law Dean Melstaw Maria, along with 6 other law professors, and the House of Representatives Maccabean Bloc, filed separate petitions for the High Court to issue a writ of preliminary injunction and/or temporary restraining order from implementing Republic Act No. 11,479, which was signed into law by President Rodrigo Duterte on July 3, amid appeals to veto the widely opposed bill. The law, which gives more surveillance powers to government forces, takes effect on July 18. The Anti-Terrorism Council, chaired by Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdia, is set to convene to review the law and draft its implementing rules and regulations. Maria's group cited the Duterte administration's threats of arrest and unfounded criminal prosecution, mentioning the sedition case it wrongfully filed previously against dozens of opposition members and Vice President Leni Robredo for their supposed involvement in a plot to oust Duterte. There can be no doubt that this law imperils the constitutional rights and liberties of our citizens, the petitioners wrote. Its provisions are a lure to abuse and misuse, hard to resist on the part of malicious government officials. The chilling effect on the freedom of expression, speech and the press are all too real. The full law professors also argued that the law will be a waste of vital financial resources, especially when the country is facing the COVID-19 pandemic. The Maccabean Bloc, composed of Representatives Carlos Sarried, Ferdinand Gate, Eufemia Colamat, Arlene Broses, Franz Castro, Sarah Lago, and several opposition party list leaders, said the law directly threatens their safety. They cited the pervasive practice of Duterte and his men of red tagging, terrorist tagging, and vilification against activists, dissenters, and political opposition. The continued and persistent terrorist tagging against petitioners and their party-list organizations, including Maccabean, by the state forces, using public funds, shows the immediacy of the danger of sustaining some direct injury on their part once the assailed Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 is implemented, they wrote. Albay Representative Edsel Lagman also filed a similar petition, challenging the entire anti-terrorism law for being replete with constitutional infirmities. Meanwhile, another group of lawyers, led by Addy Howard Kaleha and Bro. Armin Lustro from the Dosal brothers, went to the Supreme Court to physically file their petition. They were the first group to file a petition on July 4, but it was done electronically. They sought to nullify sections permitting wiretapping of suspected terrorists and punishable acts that constitute terrorism, among others. They argued that these provisions are repugnant and perilous to the constitutional rights of Filipino citizens, including free speech. At least 4 other individuals, including retired Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio and groups, have expressed their plans to question several provisions of the act before the Supreme Court, which is dominated by Duterte appointees including Chief Justice Diosdado Peralta. The Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 repeals the Human Security Act of 2007, giving more surveillance powers to government forces. Among its contentious features is a provision allowing suspected terrorists to be arrested without warrant and detained without charges for up to 24 days. Critics said the measure relaxes safeguards on human rights and is open to abuse, but lawmakers who authored and sponsored the bill said it is at par with the laws of other countries and will not be used against law-abiding citizens. Philippines records highest single-day jump in COVID-19 cases at 2,434, total exceeds 44,000. The Philippines recorded an all-time high single-day increase in COVID-19 cases on Sunday, with the Department of Health reporting 2,434 new infections. This broke the previous record high of 1,531 posted just 2 days ago. The total case count soared to 44,254, with 1,147 of the new cases classified as fresh or were detected in the last 3 days. The other 1,287 are late cases or were part of the validation backlog, according to the DOE. As the country continues to ease community quarantine measures, the rise in the number of cases may be attributed to the increased contact among the population, the agency said. The latest case bulletin issued by the DOE showed that 1,069 of the new cases were registered in Metro Manila. It further said 602 came from Central Visayas, 756 from other regions nationwide, and the remaining 7 are overseas Filipinos who recently returned to the country. The DOE also listed a record high number in single-day recoveries at 489 new COVID-19 survivors. Total recoveries now stand at 11,942. 7 more died, however, pushing the death toll to 1,297. The DOE clarified that 6 of these deaths occurred in June. It also added that 10 duplicates were removed from the total case count, as it explained that the reported numbers undergo constant cleaning and validation. The country now has 29,087 active cases of the disease, with 94.3% considered mild. Meanwhile, 5.1% are asymptomatic, 0.5% are severe, and only 0.1% are critical. Infections among Filipinos residing abroad also reached 8,679, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs. This came after another 50 more caught the virus. The DFA also said another patient recovered, while 14 more died, bringing the total to 5,201 recoveries and 577 deaths. As the Philippines continues to see a spike in new infections, the DO urged the public to strictly adhere to health protocols and practice preventive measures against COVID-19. The agency also appealed to all establishments to implement the minimum health standards in their premises and to immediately report clustering of confirmed cases in their respective workplace. MRT-3 ops suspended on July 7 to 11 as personnel virus cases rise. The MRT-3 will suspend its operations starting July 7, following the increased number of COVID-19 positive employees, including depot workers and ticketing officers, its operator said Monday. The shutdown from July 7 to July 11 will give way to the RT-PCR test of all MRT-3 personnel, maintenance provider and subcontractors, to prevent further spread of the disease, the MRT-3 said in a statement. Thorough disinfection will also be conducted during the shutdown, it said. As resolved by the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases, IATF-ID, and following the increasing number of personnel who tested positive for COVID-19, the MRT-3 will temporarily suspend its operations starting Tuesday, 07 July 2020, the statement said. The period may be shortened or extended, depending on the pace of the swab testing and results, it said. The tests will be done by the Philippine Coast Guard, it said. As of July 6, at least 186 MRT-3 workers tested positive for COVID-19, including 17 station personnel and 169 depot workers, Transportation ASEC. God's Libran said. Reduced MRT-3 operations possible as COVID-19 positive depot workers reach 127. 4 MRT ticket sellers, 1 train driver positive for COVID-19. The MRT-3 has over 3,200 workers, and it will require at least 1,300 personnel to resume limited operations, it said. Bus augmentation with 90 buses will be deployed by the operator to assist passengers, in addition to 150 buses for the EDSA busway service, it said. 31 countries lift travel restrictions versus Filipinos. The Department of Foreign Affairs, DFA, on Sunday, said 31 out of 177 countries or territories had lifted inbound border restrictions on Filipino travelers amid the coronavirus pandemic. But the DFA clarified that the lifting of the travel ban was subject to medical protocols on arriving passengers. Some of the countries that recently opened their borders to Filipinos include the Bahamas, Egypt, Ethiopia, and United Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, 68 countries' territories still do not allow entry, such as Cuba, Haiti, Palau, Timor-Leste, France, and most countries in Middle East Africa, among others. About 78 countries' territories, despite inbound border closures, give entry exemptions to Filipinos who are citizens of the destination country and returning residents, overseas Filipino workers with work visas and contracts, diplomatic or United Nations passport holders, going to their post or on official travel. The DFA said 138 countries now allowed Filipinos to return to the Philippines, subject to flight availability and other special arrangements. The department added that, together with Philippine embassies and consulates in these countries, it remains fully committed to bringing home our nationals, whenever possible. But it reiterated that with the recent announcement of the Manila International Airport Authority on the resumption of international flight operations at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport Terminal 3, beginning July 8, 2020, travel restrictions can change without prior public notice. Therefore, all travelers are advised to always check ahead of travel dates with the airlines that will be used, as well as with relevant embassies or consulates before departure or before booking a ticket, it said. PH Coast Guard files criminal cases versus HK ship crew. The company and officers of bulk carrier Vienna Wood are formally accused of reckless imprudence, resulting in multiple homicide and damage to property, as the 14 crew of fishing boat Liberty 5 remain missing. The Philippine Coast Guard, PCG, on Monday, July 6, pressed criminal charges against the company, master, and officers of Hong Kong-flagged bulk carrier Vienna Wood over its collision with Philippine fishing boat Liberty 5 last week, which left 14 Filipinos missing. The PCG in Occidental Mindoro, led by Station Commander Lieutenant Valerie Lagua, filed cases of reckless imprudence, resulting in multiple homicide and damage to property, against the respondents with the Provincial Prosecutor's Office, said PCG spokesperson Commodore Armando Belilo. Witnesses include PCG personnel, responders, and fishermen, he added. The PCG filed the first documents of the cases on Friday, July 3, but Prosecutor Roina Garcia Villa-Flores had additional requirements, which the PCG submitted at 10:50 a.m. on Monday, Belilo said. Respondents named in the charge sheet are Namiko's Transworld Maritime Company, Zhang Weiwei of Shandong, China, Master, Xin Bin of Henan, China, Officer, Yu Lei of Jilin, China, Officer, Yang Zifeng of Shandong, China, Officer, Fan Kuojin, Officer, Xia Zhen, Officer, Wang Xingtu, Officer. The Vienna Wood is currently detained at the port of Batangas. The PCG said its crew cooperated well in the investigation. Although the ship has 20 crew members, only the master and officers are named in the cases. Meanwhile, the extended search for the missing mariners will continue until Tuesday, July 7th. Chances of finding survivors beyond 3 days after the mishap are slim, PCG Commandant Vice Admiral George Sabia Jr. earlier said, and the focus of search efforts has shifted from rescuing victims to retrieving bodies. The PCG, Philippine Air Force, Philippine National Police Maritime Group, Bureau of Fire Protection, and several local government disaster response teams have been searching the waters off Occidental Mindoro and its coastline since June 28, after the Vienna Wood hit the Liberty 5, some 14 nautical miles off Mamburao, Occidental Mindoro, at 10:20 p.m. on June 27. The Liberty 5 capsized from the impact. On the morning of June 28, an initial team from the PCG in Batangas located the vessel's upturned hull, peering just above the water's surface. The 11 crew and 3 passengers, all employees of boat owner Irma Fishing and Trading, may have been trapped inside the Liberty 5 when it foundered, Belilo earlier said. Although the Vienna Wood remained in the vicinity after the collision, it did not deploy a rescue team or attempt to actively assist the distressed mariners. In a statement, the Vienna Wood's manager Namikos said they initiated a search operation immediately after the incident and found no survivors. But according to the PCG's investigation, the Vienna Wood's crewmaster said choppy waters at the time would have made lowering a lifeboat dangerous, and their priority had been to steer their massive ship away from some 7 smaller vessels that had come to aid the Liberty 5. The Liberty 5 did register on the Vienna Wood's radar, and the bulk carrier tried to veer away to avoid a collision, but it was too late. The Liberty 5's portside hull caved in, PCG divers found, while the Vienna Wood sustained a hole on its stem, the most forward part of its bow. Although Sabia earlier said the collision was likely an accident, he added the cargo ship's crew were likely accountable at least for not having actively assisted the distressed Liberty 5. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque on June 29 said the incident was a mere Bangalore accident. Foreign Secretary Theodore Locsin Jr. said the incident must not be politicized. The Chinese embassy in Manila, in a statement, said it was shocked by the incident and opposed its politicization. Hong Kong, the Vienna Woods base, is a special administrative region of China. On July 2, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, in a virtual forum of the National Defense College of the Philippines, mentioned the incident among instances of harassment of Filipinos by Chinese vessels in Philippine waters. The Liberty 5's fate bore similarities with fishing boat Jemver, which was rammed by a Chinese militia vessel in the West Philippine Sea in June 2019. Its 22 Filipino crew survived the incident. Because the collision between the Vienna Wood and the Liberty 5 happened in Philippine internal waters, the matter falls under complete Philippine jurisdiction. DILG issues guidelines on handling children who violate quarantine rules. Authorities are ordered to avoid unnecessary force towards children who violate quarantine rules and ensure their immediate return to their parents or guardians. The Department of Interior and Local Government, DILG, issued an advisory dated June 23 on how to handle children who violate quarantine rules and how to identify different levels of risks in children that may require additional forms of protection. The DILG said these guidelines were designed to lessen the transmission of COVID-19, while also protecting the children from violence. Children's rights groups such as Save the Children, Plan International, and Child Fund Alliance earlier released several calls to protect children at risk during the coronavirus pandemic and lockdown. Upon encountering children outside their homes during community quarantine, barangay officials and law enforcers are required to, among others, explain to the child in simple language why he or she is being brought to the barangay properly, identify himself/herself and present proper identification to the child, refrain from using vulgar or profane words, and from sexually harassing the child, avoid displaying or using any weapon, handcuffs, or other instruments of force or restraint, unless absolutely necessary and only after all other methods of control have been exhausted, but to no avail. Avoid violence or unnecessary force. Immediately endorse the child to the barangay women's and children's desk. Immediately inform the child's parents or guardians, and turn over custody to them. The advisory detailed how to identify a child's risk level, if applicable. These include children at risk, CAR, and children in conflict with the law, CICL, as defined by the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act. CARs include those who are abused, exploited, abandoned, out of school, from a dysfunctional family, or living in a high-risk community. Meanwhile, CICLs are children under the minimum age of criminal responsibility of 15, who have committed an offense under Philippine laws. The advisory also includes children in street situations who depend on the streets to live and/or work, whether alone, with peers, or with family. The DILG and the Council for the Welfare of Children issued a similar joint memorandum circular on April 6 on protocols on reaching out to street children, CARs, and CICLs during enhanced community quarantine. Various reports have emerged of authorities inflicting punishments on minors who violate quarantine rules, some of which human rights groups said were uncalled for. On April 5, a barangay captain in Pampanga made LGBTQ+ quarantine violators do lewd acts in front of a minor as punishment. In Laguna, minors were ordered to reenact their quarantine offenses, with feelings on camera by a man alleged to be a police chief. In cases of abuses committed by authorities against children, the Ateneo Human Rights Center said the minors, as represented by their legal guardians, could opt to file for criminal charges for possible child abuse. The Commission on Human Rights could also independently investigate the matter.